Majors TV Recording Monday, as I'm calling this, Monday, March
Nice.
17th, 2025, year of our Lord 2025. I already said 2025, year of our Lord, but the reason why we call it Recording Monday is Detroit City Sportscast is right now what you're seeing here. We're also going to be doing Make City Make Spence later on, so all the Majors TV one day that you'll eventually see, maybe all on the same day when this gets dropped, maybe not. I can't guarantee. Adam can though. How are you this evening, buddy?
I can't guarantee anything, so we'll just leave it at that. I'm doing all right. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Hard to believe we're already in the third Monday in March in a year that time seems to always go by fast. This year seems to go by faster. And I think it is wild that it is going this fast when there's so much happening this year, especially in the Detroit sports world. Because my coworker keeps asking me about Lions free agency, and I'm like, dude, I'm not in the brain for it completely. We'll talk a brief thing on it later, but
What are you talking about? That was the perfect transition to go to Lions free agency.
so we're gonna change the agenda a little bit early, since briefly Lions thoughts, because that way we can talk about the things fully focused into. Adam, why don't you do kind of a brief statement overhaul and maybe your opinion so far on this Lions free agency?
Well, right now it's been kind of, I don't want to call it a whirlwind just because like the defensive end position hasn't been addressed yet. And in fact, we're losing a defensive end in Zadarius Smith.
Yep.
Team
Marcus
came out and said
Davenport
that,
back though, but
yeah, Marcus Davenport is back. So which I don't, I'm not going to kill them for. I mean, it's a cheap deal for Marcus Davenport. It's a prove it deal. Prove that you can stay healthy for a season. And if he's healthy and he's able to contribute, then great. Otherwise, I can't remember how much they signed him for, but it's not anything that's.
was it 4.5?
I
Or
want to say it's
6?
somewhere around 4.5. I want to say it's somewhere around 4.5 for over a year, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he gets hurt, then he gets hurt, and you're only on the hook for. And who knows what? I know the NFL is really. There's a lot of different variables to go to a contract and how much guaranteed money a guy's going to make, how much dead cap money the team is going to be on the hook for if they end up releasing him by certain days. Basically, though, what came down to Zadarius Smith is they needed to release him before the new league year started, I believe, and they were able to save money in that sense because Zadarius Smith was going to be signed for the rest of this year, and I believe after this season he was going to become an unrestricted free agent. So, I could definitely, you could definitely see why a team would go ahead and release Zadarius Smith if to save money. And again, it's not like Zadarius Smith came to Detroit this past season and lit the world on fire.
Right.
He was more or less a stopgap, to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit with the injuries that Detroit really suffered everywhere as the season went on. But the loss of Aiden Hutchinson earlier in the year against Dallas, you needed something. And
Yep.
they got Zadarius Smith for practically nothing from the Cleveland Browns. They get him for practically nothing, and they unload him, to save money in the long run with him. Now, that doesn't fix still the glaring need for a guy opposite of Aiden Hutchinson going into this next season. There's still a very, very big hole there. And we're not sure how Aiden Hutchinson's going to, be when he gets back up to, when he starts next season. There's going to be plenty of rust. There's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a mental aspect to it of him just kind of getting back into the routines, kind of trusting his body. I've never had a significant injury like that before in my life, but I've heard other people talk about, kind of, some hesitations when it comes to, getting back to the thick of things. There's always, something going on in your head, that is, telling you you're making you worried, getting you anxious about not suffering something like that again. So I'm sure there's going to be a mental aspect that he's going to have to, get over as well. But in the meantime, too, two guys who were potentially linked to the Lions, Max Crosby and Myles Garrett. Max Crosby ends up signing a extension with the Las Vegas Raiders, while Myles Garrett goes and ends up signing an extension, a massive extension, with the Cleveland Browns. So those two guys are off the table. Now we have Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati, who is also a possibility for the Lions. And after what the Bengals did last night and re-signing some of their high-priced wide receivers, there's questions on whether or not they're going to be able to bring back a guy like Trey Hendrickson. So he's obviously an option there. The draft is an option. Further trades are also an option. But there's still a glaring hole when it comes to the defensive end position, which is something I still trust that Brad Holmes is gonna fix it, address it some way or another. Obviously, the other big news was Carlton Davis moving on. He signs with the New England Patriots. Again, sucks to see him go. However, coming into Detroit,
Money.
yeah, exactly. DJ Reed from the New York Jets, who, in my opinion, is an upgrade from Carlton Davis. So you got DJ Reed, Terrion Arnold back there. I think that I'm very happy with what is happening in that Detroit secondary heading into next season. Very, very thrilled, especially given the contract, the money that was given to DJ Reed, especially afterwards, and seeing what some of these other guys signed for. I think Brad Holmes got a very, very good deal with him. So I think I think Lions fans should be encouraged by that. I think they should be excited by that. And I really, really like what the secondary is shaping out to be heading into next year. So,
Yep. So to give you a rundown on the contract, Carlton Davis to New England was 3 years, $20 million per year. DJ Reed's is looking like 3 at 16 year per. So it's a top rated free agent at the time available to move. Derek Barnes announces also returning, coming back.
yep.
Might, if he can stay healthy, that might also help out with some of that. Rushing, pass rush, edge rushing, linebacker, the way some of the shapes that they go into. Roy Jones, another name, defensive tackle, signed from the Arizona Cardinals. I think that was 1 year, 4.5. Also, somebody that
Roy
already
Lopez. Roy Lopez.
Roy Lopez. Why am I
Yep.
thinking Roy
No.
Jones? Um,
Roy
right.
Lopez, nose tackle from Cardinals. There's actually a video of him going around social media right now, fucking deadlifting. Oh my
Mhm.
god, this guy looks like a beast with his deadlift. So go check it out
Yeah.
if you're able to.
Press conference, shows up in a black tee and a black cowboy hat, channeling Detroit City FC goalkeeper Carlos Saldana at the owners' meeting a couple weeks ago. Except he's rocking a mean, looks like he's got some flow in the back of that lid. So
So he's cramping your style.
maybe a little bit. Although he's got the side shave, he's got the side shave. They're faded, so he's got his own style on there. But I feel like that's a really good move. Also, when you count Lee McNeil might not be ready to go at the start of the year. DJ Reader also been a little bit banged up at times. You would think between that, Makai Wingo also as well. That middle of the pack, that middle part of that front line, you want a little bit of depth. So I think we'll keep people in the loop better than that. Right now, it's still early days. We're a month away from the draft. But the reason why I was saying I was not in no, especially compared to last year for free agency, is because there's so much more exciting things happening now with other teams in the city, like our Detroit Pistons. So a couple weeks ago, we did the special episode with Matt Feldbush. Shout out as always to Matt for joining us. Love getting his insight. Love getting his fire and passion. You think that's wild? Just check his Twitter out on a Pistons game day or even a Blue Sky. And the Pistons, since we've recorded that episode, which was the evening just a few hours before the matchup at the LA Clippers, 2-4. Though in every game played, the Clippers game saw James Harden go for 50 points in a floss. Golden State a few nights later, the Pistons had a lead late in the fourth quarter, couldn't hang on to it. A win in Portland the next night, and then 2 games at home versus the Washington Wizards, which saw the first game a 20-point win. However, game 2, despite coming back, Washington was on fire. I think they shot 50% from 3, if I recall roughly in that thing. They take a win, not favorable. I was at Little Caesars Arena on Saturday night for the Detroit Pistons matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which on paper would be a great matchup to kind of see how everything's going. Thunder best record in the West. SGA went for 46. However, the game that's going to be marred in potential controversy on what happened during and after a Thunder close win. Officiating very much coming into question. Cade Cunningham getting tossed. Adam, you and I personally, I think we said this before. For those in the Detroit City FC world, this was like being at a PG-13 version of Keyworth Stadium on a Detroit City FC match day. And JB Bickerstaff was like being the one to like rile people up when things were not like on there his way, followed by a blistering post-game conference. Sounds like he's been having this on his mind for a while. That being said, I still think the Pistons, with a little bit better execution, somehow win that game against the Thunder. The Thunder were not on their game. But I feel somewhat about this as a missed opportunity. So the Pistons are in New Orleans tonight against the Pelicans. Then they're at Dallas. I'm trying to think if they have one more on the road before they're back home to the Pelicans on Sunday the 23rd. But last six, what are your like immediate thoughts? Or if you want to highlight more on what JB's post-match comments on Saturday.
You want that second game against Washington back. That's a game that you should have won.
Yeah.
It's a game, especially given that stretch of games that you are in, or that you were in. I mean, going out west, facing the Clippers, facing the Warriors. Those are always going to be tough games, no matter where those teams are, respectively. I mean, obviously, the Warriors aren't quite the same Warriors team that of the past, but you're still dealing with Steph Curry, you're still dealing with Draymond Green. In LA, you're still dealing with James Harden. Even though he doesn't play defense, he can still obviously chuck up points, which is exactly what he did. And
Blazers, who are also, when healthy, they got weapons. Jeremy Grant, Danny Avdija, handful of players too.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they take care of business with the Blazers. But then you want that Wizards game in particular is one that really, really irks me, just because, yes, Wizards were shooting the lights out, but that's one you don't want to get away from you. And then that Oklahoma City game. NBA is already having problems this year in terms of, viewership, popularity. NBA has really, really gone downhill. And if you want to pinpoint problems, officiating is one of those problems. I know you were at the game, Garrett, and I don't know quite the, how, because I know you sitting in the stands and trying to take in everything from there, it may be a little bit more difficult to take in everything. You're taking different aspects of the game when you're at it, as opposed to when you're at home watching on TV. But it doesn't seem like the refs were paying any attention. I mean, they see an Oklahoma City player go down, and they automatically sit here and make assumptions. Oh, it's beef stew, so we're going to go ahead and follow him up, when beef stew had nothing to do with, what may have happened during that particular play.
Right.
It's just awful officiating, and I don't blame JB Bickerstaff one bit for going off like he did. I mean, it's something that is needed, and it's something that we needed to hear as Pistons fans coming off of last season, when we had Monty Williams, who was seemingly asleep at the wheel when it came to shit like this. Like, he would never, ever stick up for his players. He'd never go to bat for his players. And that was one of the most, losing aside, that was one of the most frustrating things when it came to Monty, is him just not speaking out, sticking up for his players, going to bat for his players in the team. But JB Bickerstaff, he did. And yeah, he's probably going to get fined. He's probably going to get a massive fine from the league. But you hope something like that is a wake-up call for Adam Silver and the rest of the NBA, because the officiating has been, it's been terrible. And you want, and that's something that the NBA really needs to rectify right now, because you still got a lot of great players in this league. You've got an up-and-coming Pistons team right now with a guy like Cade Cunningham, who is undoubtedly obviously one of the better players in the league. Whether or not he's a superstar, that's still to be debated. That's something that we talked about in the last show with Matt. But he is one of those rising stars in this league. Cade isn't there yet. Cade has arrived, but he isn't as good as what he can be. Cade still has time to get better. And you hate to see refs make it about themselves. And during the course of that, was it the third quarter, Garrett, where you had 5 technical fouls on the Pistons?
They called the Stu thing, decided it wasn't going to happen on there. Stu hunches over casual to like say something. Granted, he probably didn't need anything in that moment because it's a hot-blooded thing. He gets teed, and then there's the Cade situation where he got 2 quick ones. I'm surprised JB Bickerstaff did not get ejected.
But he did get teed up.
He got teed up, but as soon as like the first thing with Stu happened, I look over because I'm behind the hoop. You can see kind of like my photos from I think I only had it on the Twitter account, and you see JB like posting in the fans like get fired up. That was the loudest I've seen LCA. I've been in LCA for a handful of things: Pistons, wins, wrestling. Other than maybe a wrestling event or so, that was the loudest for sure for a Pistons game. That was the most. It was like shits might go down, like bad type, and at the same time, they were a bucket or 2 late in that run from completely. This is a what if game for me. This is a what if. What if you don't have shit officiating? What if you like are a little bit better with your execution, with your shots? Because they were getting looks during the game, they just weren't going in. You had an OKC team that was banged up. 2 key people out. I think Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren were out. So they had SGA for 46, and that's how they won the game. SGA and some favorable refs. I agree with you on the league. The Pistons are a refreshing. The Pistons are amongst a small crop of things about this league that are throwbacks. I think when I think of throwbacks, what do I mean by throwbacks? It's not about the hype. It's not about the buzz online. It's not about, the clicks. It's about wanting to try to be the best at your game, try to lead, eventually become a champion. There's only a handful of people in this game right now, personally. Like I see Luka obviously LeBron still has that in him. That's why he's still playing at 42 now. Luka Doncic, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Edwards. I think is a guy like that too in Minnesota. I think Cade and Jalen Green are guys like that. And I think this Cleveland Cavaliers team with that may have that edge. And I think this league online, people are wanting that. People are needing that rather than, whatever fucking excuse we're going to call that All-Star game this year. Or makeshift type thing, when there's ongoing discussion is what's more hype right now, the NBA or the women's game right now. I argue the women's game, but that's the discussion for another time when we have more time for open discussion. So I'm really curious to see what the response is to JB Bickerstaff and what that does. Yeah, he'll probably get fined. He'll probably get something. You can only go so far in the words that you say before you know what's the severity of the fine? What's going to happen in post? What's going to happen with that officiating crew? We'll see. Are you having any concerns going into this final stretch with what you've seen so far with this team?
No, I mean, I'm still encouraged. I thought that they played every single game. I thought they really played
well enough to get the win.
Well enough to get the win. So it's not like the Red Wings that we've seen recently where they've just looked plain awful.
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But the Pistons they've looked good. They've looked good. They've still looked competitive in every single game that they've played in. It's just like you said, some of the execution, and there's a growing aspect still with this team. The Oklahoma City game, in particular. I mean, that's a game that you need to learn from,
Yeah.
because you obviously you it's tough to play the refs and Oklahoma City as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a young team, and the Pistons still are relatively a young team, they end up playing themselves too in that
Yeah.
sense. Um, because you get discouraged, you get frustrated, and it can lead to shitty outcomes. And you're going to be able to remedy that better the more experience that you have.
Yep.
So, and I expect the Pistons to be better moving forward because of games like what we saw against Oklahoma City. And yeah, I mean that's something. There's another aspect to that the league needs to take care of. Do I think they will? No, because
Nope.
leagues never do that. Leagues never. It's rare. It seems that leagues hold their officials accountable for shit like that. But who knows? I mean, it's the NBA certainly does have a history with officiating and bad officiating, and um,
People serving time for corruption related to officiating,
yes,
basically.
that's not to say that this crew is engaging in that, but at the same time, the NBA still needs to do something about that. I mean, you had Beef Stew, you had Dennis Schroeder, you had Cade Cunningham, you had Oscar Thompson, you had who am I leaving out?
JB.
JB, all getting teed up, and I believe in the third quarter alone. So that's something that should, and the other thing too, SGA, leaning into those fouls, that's something that the NBA needs to take a look at too. You can't have players leaning into fouls like that and generating fouls like that, because that makes the officiating crew look bad. I mean, we see this in other leagues when it comes to embellishment. We see it in the NHL. Players getting
Mm-hmm.
penalties for diving. We see it in soccer, players getting penalties for simulation. That's something that I think the NBA really, really needs to take a look at when it comes to diving and simulation. If you want to go and talk to officials in MLS, or the pro officials with USL, or if you want to go talk to NHL officials, I think that that's something the NBA really, really needs to start to get under control. Is the simulation and diving that players tend to do, especially these superstar players, because they know they can get away with it.
Yep.
SGA does that because he knows he can get away with it at this point. LeBron does it because he knows he can get away with it at this point. And if you want to give preferential
Harden,
treatment, yeah,
Giannis, etc.
exactly. And it's something that's not fun. It's not fun for the league. It's not good for the league. It's not good for the fans. It's annoying, and it's something that just totally takes away from it.
Yeah, and you want to know the fucked up thing about it too is selfishly, I think Cade was getting preferential treatment against the Wizards on Thursday with the amount of times he was going to the line. Because I was looking, I was like, wait, we're getting calls with that, which is so this is that like levels of we get those calls when we're playing bottom feeder teams. We're the ones getting shafted against against the top or the more established, and that I don't like that across the general. Joe
And I'm not
Dumars, I
saying
know.
that doesn't happen. And just one quick thing. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in any other sport too. I mean,
Yeah,
superstar players do get the calls in their favor more times than not. I mean, we see
yeah,
this. I mean, Messi gets his calls. LeBron gets his calls, obviously in the NBA. We see it happen in baseball as well. Kind of that strike zone expanding sometimes, or
yeah.
shrinking. You know, one of the things around here was Sidney Crosby getting his calls. But again, it just seems like it happens in the NBA more so than any other league across the landscape of professional sports in the United States.
Right. So, what we'll provided we go, if not next week or 2 weeks from now, we'll have further update seeing how this Pistons team's doing. As barring a significant collapse in one of the two teams that are, because they still have what, a 5 game plus edge on whoever's in the play-in spot. So I
Yeah,
believe with that, I mean, you need a massive collapse. I don't think we're going to do that considering some of the teams there's playing. Plus, you need win streaks from going on. But one thing to
yeah,
note,
they're
I did
still yeah
remember
they're
the
still Yeah, they're still 5 games ahead of Atlanta right now.
I forgot the other game because the Dallas Mavericks, I think, are on the 21st because the Detroit Pistons are on national television this Wednesday. Love how that just remembered in my head. Miami Heat. So, because apparently Miami Heat Detroit Pistons games, which I can confirm being in person for night one of the NBA Cup, motherfucking Tyler Hero. ESPN Pistons in Miami. That is national television. So, Pelicans tonight, Heat Wednesday, Dallas Friday, I think Friday.
Yeah, the
Pelicans
21st,
home
and
at
then they got the
Chelsea.
Pelicans. So they have some very winnable. Who knows what's going to happen with that Dallas game too? I mean, are they even going to
Yeah,
play that game? Are they even going to play that game, or is Dallas going to have to forfeit? Who knows? That's
uh,
a crazy. That's a crazy situation. Crazy
it's a
situation. And
it's a good
again,
thing we it's a good thing we don't pot in the DFW area. Otherwise, we might not. I would be having no hair right now probably. Between the Mavs and the Cowboys, at least the Stars are doing good. Good transition to hockey. So Detroit Red Wings time for the third year in a row. And I believe it's the fourth year in a row timeline wise, when even though they weren't in a wild card position in 2022, a significant losing streak to ending February going into March has happened for our Detroit Red Wings. For the third straight year, a losing streak of at least 6 games has happened, while the Detroit Red Wings had some things in the wild card position. As a result, so it was 6 games in 2023. 7 games last year, 6 games this year. The Red Wings had a 4 point lead this year in a wild card spot, and two losses in 3 days to the Columbus Blue Jackets, including the Stadium Series loss at Ohio Stadium. Then you had, unfortunately, I was at LCA last week for a game, or yeah, it was last week, against the Carolina Hurricanes, about to be 2 weeks ago, where we looked like we were shorthanded despite being full strength. 2 days later, you outshoot the Utah Hockey Club almost 2-1, lose 4-2. Trade deadline happens on Friday. Joe Veleno is dealt to the Chicago Blackhawks for Craig Smith, 35, 36-year-old utility forward, still of great use, and Peter Mrazek back with the Detroit Red Wings, also in that age. Mike Babcock would be really proud of these moves off the top of his head. That's kind of like how I thought at the time. That night, the Wings had a 2-0 lead against the Washington Capitals. It was down to 2-1 going into the third period before the Wings' definition of collapse, giving up 4 goals. Then Monday, almost 50 shots on goal. Adam, you and I were on the phone talking after our Make City Make Spence recording. Almost 50 shots on goal, but Linus Ullmark had a 4.49 G at goals saved against level on that, and the Suns take a 2-1 win. Wednesday on national television sees the Winds go, I think it was 7-3 was the final over the Buffalo Sabres.
7-3. Yeah.
A big night for the Brinkett Casper Kane line. And then Friday, a tough 4-2 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes before yesterday on national television sees the Winds take a 3-0 win over the Vegas Golden Knights. As of that going in there, 15 games left. The Winds are 2 points out of the last wildcard spot amongst a bevy of other teams. The Rangers have the last spot, but let me know if I'm forgetting some teams in this dog pile of there. Canadians, Bruins, Islanders, us. I think the bottom 2 teams are the Jackets too. Columbus, yeah, or is Columbus in the third automatically now? Because was
No,
Columbus in the third in the Metro?
Columbus right now is on the outside looking in.
Okay,
As
so
far as
New
points
Jersey's got
go,
the
we're tied in points right now with Columbus, but they have a game in hand.
yep.
Same with Montreal and Ottawa. We have a game in hand on the Rangers right now.
Ottawa has
And
that first wild card spot pretty comfortably. I think. I think they'll hang on to it.
yes, Ottawa's going to hang on to that first wild card spot. Right now, because they have a 7-point lead over us, 5-point lead over the Rangers, and then a 6-point lead over the Canadians. But yeah, it's a pretty good logjam right now in the East when it comes to that final wild card spot. Like you were mentioning, you have New York, who's currently occupying it right now, but then you have Montreal at 71 points, the Blue Jackets at 70 points, us at 70 points, and then you have the Islanders at 68 points, Boston at 68 points, um, Pittsburgh at 66 points, and even Philadelphia is at 64 points. So, I mean, they're not totally out of it yet, but
This is where regulation wins also comes in, other tiebreakers. And another thing too that doesn't favor the Red Wings is the strength of schedule. The Wings have the worst, has the number one in terms of most difficult schedule to close the year out. 15 games left, 10 of them are on the road. Every team you're playing is either in the playoffs or potentially to be a playoff team.
mhm,
Um, it seems like once again this team has put themselves in a very deep hole, in a very like deep corner. So I understand, and we talked about this a little bit. A lot of people, some people we know, others in the online circles having a full on meltdown about the Iser plans actually is it actually a plan, or are we sinking? um I think you and I are on the same page here. I don't see it as an Iser plan issue. I see this to have this consecutive issue at this time of the year, 3 straight years in the playoffs, or potentially 4 straight years now too, if I'm right for 21-22, despite not being in the hunt. Then is it not an Iserman problem or culture? It's just it's a team culture problem right now.
just it's it's
It's a
not an
tough.
Iserman
It's
problem.
a right.
It's not an Iserman problem because I said before the season started, I said at the beginning of the year they weren't making the playoffs this year.
Right.
Um, there's still building that needs to be done with this team. Um, are they right there? Yes, they're right there. They're right there on the cusp of making the playoffs. Um,
Especially when you look at how bad they were going into Christmas.
yes, and it was a massive turnaround for this team. Um, when you think about it, this team should have no business being where they're at right now, given how bad they were um, during the holidays.
Yep.
Uh, there's different variables going into this. Yes, they're not done building yet. There's still other guys that they need to bring on board here. Um, Carter Mazer going down, that sucks. Because you
Yeah.
certainly want to see what he was able to do.
First
In the
game, and he
process,
goes out 5 minutes in with basically a dislocated elbow.
yeah, and in the process of all of that too, you also lose um, Fisher too to the Blue Jackets.
Yep.
Um, I mean, aside from that, too, I mean, they're just kind of like there's certain things with this team right now that they're it's a transitional period, kind of like that next step. Because even the goaltending situation, everybody's thinking that Eisman doesn't know what he's doing right now when it comes to the goaltending situation because we've had Alex Lyon, we've had Cam Talbot, then we go out and get
Billy
we've
Husso
had
to the Ducks for conditional future
we had Billy
considerations.
Husso. All of this is a stopgap before Sebastian Kosa comes up. That's what this is. Eisman's not going to go out and find a high price goaltender and sign him to a long term deal. He's not going to do that. He can't do that because you have
Right.
Sebastian Kosa coming up, and you also have Trey Augustine as well. You can't. There's
Mhm.
nothing that Eisman can do when it comes to goaltending at this point right now, other than getting these stopgaps in here to just keep the seat warm until Kosa, who will probably be, is able to come up and take that spot. Um,
I'll forget Axel Sandin Pellikka defensively too.
Axel Sandin Pellikka, word on the street is he's going to be making his way to the States here soon. And the more that you hear this guy talked about, the more it seems like he is going to be making the Red Wings roster next season, which would be huge. Because in that sense, you have Sider, you have Pellikka, and then you have
Simone Edvidson.
Simone Edvinson as well. Three very young, very, very good defensemen. Obviously, the
Even Albert Johansson.
Albert Johansson too. Oh my God, that move that he put on to score that goal the other day. Holy
Yeah,
shit!
yesterday was.
Yeah, yesterday. So I mean, yes, they are right there. This offseason, yes, you hope that Eisman goes out and gets another defenseman, and you hope he goes out and gets another forward, preferably a center. That's what needs to be.
Slash clear some dead contracts.
Yes, and clear some cap space as well. That's what you hope happens this offseason. A defenseman and a center, and then clear any cap space that you can, which I assume some of that is going to get cleared out. I think Petrie, I want to say this is the last year of his deal. You have him
Or he's
leaving
got one
though.
more year. I think he's
Does
got
he
a
have,
year after.
does he have a year after this? I know Talbot is signed next year. Line isn't on the hook for next year. Mrazek isn't going to be on the hook for next year. So you have.
I think Talbot and Mrazek have one. Talbot and Mrazek have one left after this season. The Lions off.
I could have sworn Mrazek is done after this year.
I thought it was one left because essentially you're going to have Mrazek and Talbot and Kosa probably, from what I was hearing, as the three. But we can confirm that real quick. I think for me, and this is part of what I say about the culture, I think as much as people want to talk about Eisman, I think there's a bigger problem with the Detroit Red Wings.
No, you're right. You're right about Mrazek. He becomes a UFA in 2026. So
the bigger problem is a problem we've talked about with the Tigers. Priscillich.
There is a common variable with those two teams, isn't there?
Yep, especially the approach of how Priscillich, in our opinion, treats the Red Wings versus how his father and mother before Illich Holdings went into casino business treated the Red Wings. Basically, Mike and Marian Illich, to me, took that dead wings, everything you call it, and through hell and high water and great talent, and made it into the team that we grew up with that won 4 Stanley Cups in the 12-year period, going to 2 others and losing conference finals, etc. Chris Illich, to me, sees this as a dollar and cent thing.
I hate Priscillich. I do. I hate him so much, Garrett. Like the dude is
But I think with that,
it's night and day when it comes to what his dad was doing and what he's doing. He is the worst owner that Detroit has seen in quite some time. And it's awful that he's the owner of 2 of our, and I'm saying 5 major sports teams. He sucks. He sucks. Especially some of the other stories, especially some of the stories I've heard about him too from mutual friend of ours, which you might know what I'm talking about already.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and I believe that story 100%. So, go ahead.
And I think too, the tough thing about it is, I think that is unfortunately handicapped some of the things Steve Yzerman's wanted to do, whether it was maybe parting ways with Derek Lalonde earlier potentially, whether it was not being able to be as much of a player in the free agent game. And maybe Ken Holland had some of that issue too in 2015, in the 2016 offseason, right? Because that's last year we made the playoffs and you had Steven Stamkos then as a free agent. You had all these people. What did we do that free agent offseason? We signed Franz Nielsen.
Awful.
We re-signed Darren Helm, who took less money to come back as opposed to where else, because he was getting more money for like Western Canadian teams, if I recall correctly. Steve Ott, Thomas Vanek, which actually we were able to move at the deadline. And yeah, for the last year of the Joe was the first year of this playoff drought. In addition to also ending our relationship with Molson Molson Coors, and switching to Anheuser-Busch and Labatt. So maybe that's part of the reason why the streak's done. We have this drought too, because Molson Canadian and Red Wings to me go hand in hand. But I don't know. There's also the Labatt Club, which is no longer an exclusive thing, which is now becoming an exclusive club thing for 2025, 2026, if it gives you an idea maybe as to where some of these priorities are going to be with this Detroit Red Wings team. It's going to be very difficult for this team to get into the playoffs. I know you've said it that, yeah. I almost feel like it, like I said, it's wild. It's wild that they were able to turn it around as much as they did from Christmas. It's also incredibly frustrating because they did what they've done before fucking again.
Last year we could blame it on the priority jerseys. This year we don't have that excuse.
We have nothing to fucking blame except themselves. So
Oh no, we can blame the break. We can blame the break. We can blame what was it called? Four
losing
Nations
to
Cup.
Tampa, turning up ass against Tampa on the last game before a 2-week break, and then losing the 2-goal lead to the Wild in the third period of your first game back from the break.
I'll tell you what though, Garrett. What is encouraging is that last game against the Golden Knights, because that was arguably their best game of the season. And if they can carry on that momentum, they're going to need it. They're going to need it because they've got Washington coming up. Tomorrow?
Washington, Vegas, Utah, I think are all away. There might be one more in that mix. Then you have Ottawa at home.
Yeah, and all that. That's all going to be tough. All going to be tough.
Yeah, it's a gauntlet. 91 points is what the Winds had last year, but due to not getting regulation wins, they weren't able to get in over the Capitals, who also had 91. That means they would need to go, if 91 is the threshold, they would need to win 10 of their last 15 and get an overtime loss in that, just to match what they did last year. And then you might need to go what do you consider a good end of the year? Because we are skeptical of us making the playoffs. So what's acceptable for these final 15?
It's so hard because you'd like for them to be where they were at least last year. So if they're able to get around anywhere near close to that, that'll be fine with me. So yeah, like I said, I don't think I never said they're making the playoffs. And if this be competitive. Challenge for that spot. If you end up coming up short, fine, whatever. We move on to next season. Just stay competitive these final 15 games. That's all.
Don't go down. Don't wind up channeling what you did before Christmas. Don't channel what you did in this 7-game run. Go for it. Give it your all. Don't make your coach miserable, and limit the injury damage. So
if they play like they did yesterday, though, they'll be in the playoffs.
Which is fucking wild. And you want to know what? Because of that logjam, maybe we don't need as many points to get in this year, but it's gonna be fucking tough.
Yep.
We'll keep you updated. We'll keep everybody updated the next time we record for that. Let's end real quick because I know because we got to get ready for Make City Make Spence. 2 things. Let's talk about the Tigers first. We are 10 days away from the start of the Major League season. Fuck.
Crazy.
Tarek Skubal, we know it's going to be opening day. Some announcements were related to some roster stuff. Obviously, we know Matt Beerley and Parker Meadows are going to be out for opening day due to some injuries. News about who's going to be starting the season in Toledo.
Big news today was Jace Jung getting sent down to Toledo, getting option to Toledo. Same with Sean Gunther as well. Both those guys were on the postseason roster last year. Crazy thing about Jace Jung, though, he went into this spring training with third base to lose, and he ended up losing it. Which isn't something out of the ordinary. I mean, the guy is still pretty much a rookie. He's 25 years old. Nobody should be concerned about him right now. The thing that sucks, though, is heading into spring training, his big problem was supposed to be his defense. It wasn't supposed to be his offense, which his offense in spring training was worse than his defense. That's why he ended up getting sent down. He was hitting below 200, like way below 200. I want to say he's like hitting like 141 or something like that. And he was like he only had like 4 hits. I want to say he was like 4 for 20. I'm probably totally butchering this though. You can go to our website, DetroitTheMajors.net, and we have something up on there about Jace Jung getting sent down today. And it's just kind of like crazy just to think about, all of the trouble the Tigers have had when it came to third base. I heard this being talked about today. How they're never really able to hammer down a third baseman, whether it is Jace Jung right now, Miguel Cabrera, never, because they got him as a third baseman, but he never solidified that spot for him. He ended up being moved over to third. But then when Prince Fielder came over, he moved, he moved back over to from first base to third base, and then he got hit in the face, and they moved him out of third base, and he ended up becoming a DH. So right now, you saw a lot of that pitching chaos last year with the team. Now we're going to be having third base chaos this year because there's going to be a bunch of different guys kind of occupying that spot based on different situations. One of those guys possibly being Javi Baez during, for some games. But it sounds like right now it's going to be Zach McKinstry against right-handed hitters and Andy Ibanez against left-handed hitters. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and he brought up the idea of calling the Boston Red Sox about Rafael Devers. And I think
you and I talked about this.
And I thought that this was a really, really good thing that the Tigers need to look at here. Devers right now is becoming a little bit of a malcontent in Boston because of them going out and getting Bregman. And I have no fucking clue what the Red Sox are doing right now when it comes to their infield. They have Bregman. They never needed Bregman.
Not only did they get Bregman, they paid $40 million a year for 3 years.
Yes, and he has opt-outs after this season. You already have Devers. Yes, he's not that good defensively, but he's also, I believe, 3 years younger than Bregman is.
Yep.
Can hit the lights out. He's a positive player for, when it comes to WAR. I think last year was a 3.7, but he can hit the 4s or the 5s as well, which is excellent. 900 OPS type of player, which is again excellent. I would love for them to give Boston a call about Devers and bring him and try to hash something out with them, because also you have a massive, massive logjam in Boston when it comes to prospects as well. They have 2 really, really good prospects with Boston right now who are ready to come up this year, but there's already a logjam. You have players blocking them already. I don't think Boston's going to listen. But the Tigers definitely have the pieces to get it done, though, if they need to. Detroit has the best
ranked farm system.
Number 1 ranked farm system in the league. So if they want to get it done, they can. Who knows, though? There's that Chris Illich aspect. I don't know. I would love for them to go out and get Rafael Devers, though. And who knows? I mean, with Jace Jung, too, he's going to go down to Toledo. I'm encouraged with them doing that now, because last year, when they started the season with Torkelson up, it seemed like they kept Yes, it seemed like they kept on pushing that off, and then they finally did it. And it almost seemed like it was too late last season at the point that they did do it. This year, they're not rushing Jace Jung. They're starting him off in the minors, which is exactly what they should be doing with him, having him get things right there, and then you bring him up when he's ready. So, it's going to be a little bit of chaotic to start the season at third base, but that pitching staff should be able to make up for a lot of those blemishes when it comes to how things are working out defensively for them, and hopefully not too much offensively. But
Javi Baez likely will get short then with McKinstry Ibanez thing. Last thing, and then we'll shift to Detroit City FC. Torkelson taking reps in the outfield.
We talked about it yesterday. He played outfield when he was in college. Ironically enough, they drafted him as a third baseman. It didn't quite work out that way. I don't know. Sure, why not? Whatever.
Looks like he's taking some. Looks like both Torque and Javi Baez seem to be on a more. There's hope. And seems like some of the things that they've been doing in spring training a little bit. Obviously, we need competitive games, which will be starting next Thursday at LA. We'll try to get one, if not the start of the season, a little bit after in the Feldbush family with Yachty. to talk and to see if we can successfully predict, because last year we thought we would win in the division. Got into the playoffs, but we didn't win the
Don't think
division.
they win the division this year.
So yeah, it's a bummer. Real quick now, lastly, Detroit City FC, which we're going to be about to talk about with Sean Spence in about 5-10 minutes. So match day 2 USL Championship took place this past Saturday at Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Team that won USL Championship playoffs last year. Detroit City won 2-1 there 364 days prior to their matchup this past weekend. Came from behind the Saturday to get it done. The MASLW ladies finished their indoor regular season going 10-0. Unfortunately, they only scored 10 as opposed to my hoping they'd get 17 for 100, but they only conceded one for for the third time this season. I think their goal total allowed was 25, 26 goals or whatever conceded over 10 games, which for indoor soccer is really, really fucking good. Your thoughts real quick on what transpired, all things Les Rouge over the weekend.
More of the same from the MSALW team. That's expected at this point. The big question now is whether or not there's going to be a playoff.
And where?
And where. When it comes to the men's side, very, very good win. Very encouraging win. I don't think there's a whole lot that you could have taken from the Miami game. Just, win that game. Considering that Miami is dog shit. But going up against the defending champion Colorado, in that atmosphere, it's
Cold weather, yeah.
cold weather,
Altitude, yeah.
Yep, altitude and everything like that. It was good because they didn't look good to open things up, much like the Miami game. It seemed like things weren't looking good. They were able to turn around the second half. That Villanueva Chapman connection looked really good. Villanueva playing out wide like he's been doing. Obviously, that's where his spot is, but he's looked really, really good. Really good. So I'm encouraged by him. I wish Gonzatti would have gotten that goal. I wish he got a foot on it just to give him credit for it, because he definitely contributed to it, but he's not going to get credit for it.
There's a lot of things to like right now about that team. What you're saying with Villanueva, forward work, Jade Chapman distributing, Justiel Cedeno running at people, and the vision playing on that. And this is a squad that also doesn't have Elijah and Devin Mensa right now. I mean, for the first two matches.
They rotated guys too. Lejap wasn't there. Ate Diouf wasn't in that squad Saturday in Colorado. You had Yamazaki up with the team for that particular game. So who knows how this is going to all rotate as the season goes on. But it's weird looking at that aspect of things as a Detroit City supporter, because it's something that they never really had to take advantage of in seasons past. So I know we're up against it right now, so we should probably
Yeah. Last thing on that, Jordan Bio Smith finally officially announced Friday on loan from MLS side Minnesota United. Look for him as an attacking option as well. We're going to talk deeper details with Make City Make Spence, as well as the Channel 451 boys. You're going to be gathering for Tunnel Talk ahead of the home opener this Saturday at Keyword Stadium, 4 p.m. Birmingham Legion, who are a draw and a loss after their first two games. So it'll be very, very interesting. Adam, Detroit.themajorsports.com, as you mentioned, where people can check out all Majors Detroit content. Where else can folks find us at online, as well as yourself?
Yep. Find us on any major social media platform, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook. I think we're even on Threads. We're also on Instagram as well. At TMSNX Detroit. Also on YouTube. YouTube.com/The Majors TV. You could find me over at TMSNX Adam, Twitter, and Blue Sky.
Find me Twitter, Instagram, Discord, GM Comats, Blue Sky, GM Comats at bsky.social. Will be plenty of things to come around. Also, check out the molding series. Always sending Adam at least a few videos a week. And then keep everybody in the loops. Like I said, we're about to get done with this one and record Make City Make Spence. Look for Channel 451 Tunnel Talk hitting on later this week as well, and be ready for some post-match recap stuff from the home opener this weekend, where hopefully we don't freeze to death. So for Adam and Garrett here, we'll catch y'all next time for a Detroit City Sportscast. We'll catch y'all soon for those that are going to check out Make City Make Spence. And yeah, until next time, see ya.
See ya.